So good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for our February Outdoor Florida webinar presented by the Office of Greenways and Trails. Today, we are really excited to feature guest speaker Mark Sees, who is the Wetlands Program Manager for the City of Orlando. He'll be sharing today about the function of the wetlands and how the property is managed both for water treatment and recreation. Before we get into the webinar, I have a couple reminders for the presentation today. At the end of the slideshow, we will have time for a question and answer portion. So please hold all your questions until then, and you can either send them in the chat directly to me or put them in the chat regularly. Please note this webinar is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the Florida State Parks YouTube channel in the future, and everyone who has registered will receive a link to the recording. I'd like now to introduce our guest a little bit more. Mark Sees has been the Wetlands Program Manager for the City of Orlando for the last 25 years. And prior to this, he was a consulting biologist with an engineering consulting firm for 5 years. Mark's primary duties include managing the Orlando Easterly Wetlands Program, a large-scale constructed treatment system. He has also been involved in numerous water quality enhancement projects and the design of smaller constructed wetland treatment systems. Mark is licensed as a commercial aquatic herbicide applicator, certified prescribed burn manager, commercial drone pilot, and the winner of the National Wetlands Award in 2018, along with a Congressional Service Award for his work in wetlands. Thank you again, Mark, so much for taking the time to speak on our webinar series today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, we'll get started.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Appreciate it. Excited to be here and give you guys this presentation. We'll see if we can get it. See if we can get it swapped over here. Having trouble swapping it over all of a sudden.
Yep, that looks good.
Okay, great. All right, well, welcome everybody. It's Valentine's Day, and certainly I want to wish you guys a happy Valentine's Day and wish my lovely wife of 31 years happy Valentine's Day as well. Today we're going to be talking about the Orlando wetlands, but wetlands in general are just amazing features in our landscape. Not only do they clean our water, basically the kidneys of our water and filtering out pollutants and problems within our water bodies, but they also lessen the impacts of flooding. They slow down soil erosion from the landscape. They provide just incredible, wildlife and biodiversity. In fact, those are the biological hotspots on the face of the earth, are our marshes and wetland areas. They also provide incredible places for recreation and education. And what's unique about this Orlando Wetlands project is that, we've really been able to capitalize on almost all those features and benefits. And so I kind of want to walk you through how the city of Orlando has done this, through the years. So let's see, there we go. So we're going to start off our project at the Iron Bridge Regional Water Reclamation Facility. This is the city of Orlando's largest wastewater treatment facility. It can handle raw sewage from about 40 million gallons a day of raw sewage. That's about 400 to 500,000 homes or people that are contributing that wastewater to the treatment plant. And so Iron Bridge, it accepts not only from the city of Orlando, but Maitland, Castleberry, Winter Park, portions of Orange County and Seminole County. But as they're accepting that wastewater, that raw sewage, their whole mission is to take that and turn that into safe, usable, reclaimed water. And so their goal is to eliminate, about 95, 96, 97% of the nitrogen and phosphorus, which are the primary pollutants that are in that water. So they get it down to very safe, usable water, but there's still a lot of excess, reclaimed water when it's not being used for irrigation or washing down jet airplanes or irrigating golf courses. What do you do with that water? Well, the city of Orlando, back in the mid-1980s, came up with a very ingenious project, and they decided to construct the world's first large-scale wetland treatment system. And so here it is, flying over the Iron Bridge plant. It's a 5-stage Bardenpho system, which means the wastewater goes through a series of anaerobic and then aerobic tanks where bacteria and microorganisms treat the water, and their main job is to remove those nutrients and pollutants from the water. And that's how we make it, clean and safe and usable, turning it into safe, usable, reclaimed water. So, but once we finish with that water, the city built and designed this project in the mid-1980s, and it was the world's first large-scale constructed wetland treatment system to polish reclaimed water from a wastewater treatment facility. And so it's kind of our unique claim to fame. It was a very large system, or it is a very large system, and it was built in the mid-1980s for a cost of $21.5 million. The basic plan or premise was to take this cattle pasture, build some elevated dikes or levees, which compartmentalize the system into 18 different impoundments. Those impoundments are then planted with wetland marsh plants, and then it's flooded with that reclaimed water that's coming in from the Iron Bridge Regional Water Pollution Control Facility. When it comes in, it was finally finished in July of 1987. It took them about 2 years or so to build it. The final wet area is about 1,200 acres. The facility size is around 1,800 acres. And so we've got some upland areas, but then we have, again, 1,200 acres are basically underwater. There's 18 treatment cells, and there's 67 water control structures that allow us to move the water from one end of the property to the other. So when we first began to receive our flow, we started off about 6 million gallons a day back in 1987, and that has steadily been increased. Now the system, when it was originally built, was designed to only handle 20 million gallons a day, but we've since re-rated it, and it's now designed, and we now are permitted to accept up to 35 million gallons a day of water. Our annual average flow is about 16 to 17 million gallons a day. And this is, you're taking a look at the influent control structure, and that's where all the water boils into the wetlands, and then we break it into different flow pathways. As it goes over that waterfall that you saw, it goes into a pipe, and then it boils into the wetland. And so it looks just like a natural spring, and the water begins its 30 to 40 day journey through the Orlando wetlands. And so the water is now spreading out, and you're taking a look at cell number 1. Remember, there's 18 of these treatment cells. Cell number 1 has 6 or 7 islands in it, and you can see those islands with trees, and those were planted for wildlife habitat, to encourage roosting birds and things like that to nest in those trees. So here it is, the different communities that were actually created. So the initial area near the inflow, we created 410 acres of deep marsh, and the deep marsh are these areas that are cattails or bulrush. So they're pretty much monocultures of cattails and bulrush. Once the water leaves the deep marsh, it flows into the 380 acre mixed marsh area. And that's just as it sounds. It's a mixture of different vegetation. There's things like water lilies and spatterdock and pickerelweed and arrowhead, all kinds of different plants, emergent, floating leaved, and there's also submerged plants as well that live in the mixed marsh. And then the original designers for the last 300 to 400 acres, they planted 310 acres of hardwood swamp trees, things like sweet gum, black gum, tupelo, lots of cypress. Most of those trees didn't make it because it's about 3 feet of water in that deep marsh area, or in that hardwood swamp area, I'm sorry. And so a lot of those trees didn't make it. So the hardwood swamp area now is managed more like a mixed marsh, but there are still remnants of a lot of those trees, and there's also a very large cypress dome that was on the property originally, and it became incorporated into the Orlando Wetlands project. So as I mentioned, the water as it flows through, it has about a 30 to 40-day detention time. There's these three different vegetative communities or wetland type communities. And then the other unique feature that we have is a very large lake. It's about 90 to 100 acres in size. And that's where all of the material was mined up from to build these 18 miles of earthen levees that compartmentalize the wetlands into the 18 different treatment cells. Now, remember I mentioned that this was all cattle pasture. Well, when it was originally being built, the levees were installed, the pipeline was built back to the Iron Bridge plant, and that was a 17-mile long, 4-foot diameter pipeline. But now the crews brought in over 2.2 million plants and planted them by hand, about 60 different species of wetland plants. And that's to turn this Bahia cow pasture, Bahia grass cow pasture, into this very diverse, lush, wetland. And also there were over 200,000 hardwood trees that were planted across that hardwood swamp. So quite a massive undertaking to actually get the wetlands started back in the mid 1980s. So it goes along with having this large wetland treatment system is a lot of different land management aspects. We do everything from planting different plants, planting things like bulrush. When maybe we dig out or remove certain plants, we might come back in and install native plants that are desirable. We'll also control water levels. Remember, I mentioned there's 67 of those water control structures. And in the upper right, you can see that Cody is with his gloves on pulling the weir board up. He's actually pulling that board out to drain that area down. And so we can lower water levels or we can flood certain areas. And we do that from time to time based on our objectives and goals. And sometimes it's for wildlife. We're managing a cell to encourage more wildlife, or, we're flooding or lowering the water level for water quality objectives. And then down in the bottom right, you see the two guys on the airboat. They're actually applying a herbicide to remove water lettuce. And so we do, from time to time, go out and manage the wetlands for invasive or exotic species that come in, particularly plant species that come in and want to take over the wetlands. And so certainly we don't want those exotic or nuisance plants taking over our native species. And so we will go out and manage those. So there's a lot of land management that goes into managing the wetlands. And then the fun thing that we get to do is controlled burning. And so, also in the controlled burns, we'll go in and light the cattails on fire, and we will burn off the stubble, the dead biomass before it falls into the wetlands. And that's all very carefully controlled and overseen when we do that. And that's also used to encourage wildlife and discourage those threatened and invasive species of plants that come in. So all this leads to our primary goal, which is removing any excess nitrogen and phosphorus from that reclaimed water as it's flowing through. So that's our primary goal and mission in the wetlands, is to provide outstanding water quality. And you can see we typically remove about anywhere from 60 to 85, even 90% of the nitrogen and phosphorus as it flows into the wetlands. So by the time we're finished with removing those nutrients, that water is typically 2 to 3 times cleaner than what is in the St. Johns River. And so it's a really unique system in that we typically think of a wastewater treatment plant as a point source discharge, a polluter of the environment. But coupled with this wetlands project, we actually see that we are helping to clean up the St. Johns River. And so we are no longer polluting the environment. We're actually helping to enhance the environment. And so that's super important to us. But then, as we've got all this great water quality, that's taken care of. Our secondary goal for the wetlands is to provide a space for flora and fauna. Great, that's our second mission, is trying to promote various wildlife species and encourage those and provide them a home. And things like black-necked stilts and yellow rat snakes and blue-eyed grass. White-tailed deer abound here in the wetlands. bobcats, and we have, wild pigs, and we've even seen Florida panthers occasionally on the property as they may be wandering through. And then who can forget the king of the wetlands, the American alligator? In fact, we have about 1,700 alligators in the Orlando wetlands. And so that's something, that most folks, when they come out here to see, they're coming to see, all the alligators, but then also all the bird life, all the different things that are here. Just incredible biodiversity. And again, when you think about, we've got these excess nutrients that are coming in with the flow of water. The nutrients give rise to algae that's growing in and among the wetland plants. They attach to all the plant stems that are in the marshes. Those algae is now being fed upon by various macroinvertebrates. And those macroinvertebrates give rise to all the different, wildlife species that most of us are coming out to enjoy. Things like the birds are feeding on the fish, and the fish are feeding on the macroinvertebrates, and so on and so forth. So over 63 species of butterflies, over 33 species of dragonflies and damselflies, and again, over 240 species of birds have been observed utilizing the Orlando wetlands. And that's something we do. We spend a lot of time looking at and cataloging and adding to our biodiversity list of the wetlands. And certainly all this wildlife is perfect for folks to want to come out and view. And so the Orlando wetlands is just a great place to come out and enjoy outdoor nature recreation. Tons of different recreational opportunities, everything from bird watching, which is quite popular, to wildlife and landscape photography is another hugely popular hobby out here for folks to come out and enjoy. We also get runners, hikers, we get horseback riders. We do allow horses to utilize the wetland berms. Just all kinds of recreational activities, but we do keep the wetlands as a passive recreational facility, so no active recreation. We have an incredible group of volunteers. They're called the Friends of the Orlando Wetlands. There's about 65 of those folks, and they do all sorts of jobs and duties out here. In fact, last year they gave over about 10,000 hours of their time to the Orlando wetlands. And one of the big things that they do is they help and they lead, numerous tours. Along with our staff, which we have a public outreach section who they're tasked with reaching out and providing quality education. And that's one of the things that we're very excited about, is to show people the wetlands, let them appreciate the wildlife, but then also understand what the facility is. First and foremost, this is a water reclamation facility. In fact, myself and my staff, we work for the Water Reclamation Division of the City of Orlando. So we're within the Public Works Department. And so that's really unique, because here we are managing this incredible, water reclamation project, but that it's also serving basically as a public space. In fact, for many years, it was known as the Orlando Wetlands Park. Recently, we've removed the name park because we don't want people we're trying to disassociate folks with that impression that it's, someplace that they can come out and be served, much in the way much of our parks are tasked with doing. Parks are there and kind of at the forefront of their goal is to cater towards the public. And one of the things we want to change is the public perception is that this is a water reclamation facility first, a wildlife habitat and space second, and then thirdly, it is a public amenity. And so that's why we've removed the name park from our facility. But again, about 11,500 folks last year were given personalized tours of the Orlando wetlands between our staff and our incredible volunteer corps. And we have everything from these trams that are pulled behind a truck. About 1,700 tours were conducted last year. And then we also have these electric vehicles. We have about 7 of these electric vehicles in our fleet. And so every weekend, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, our volunteer group will lead public tours that are free of charge. And so I encourage you, if you're in the Orlando area, come out, visit the Orlando wetlands and hop on one of the trams. This last year, we had over 112,000 people visited the Orlando wetlands, and that number just continues to grow. But again, it's not just a facility to come out and recreate in. It's an active facility where we're doing wildlife monitoring. We're part of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's wood stork working group. And as many of you know, at one point the wood stork was endangered and then threatened, and they've recently been removed from the threatened and endangered species list because of conservation efforts. And so every year we go out using drone technology. We fly around and we will monitor the wood storks, count the eggs, count the chicks. And so once a week we'll go out and actually take a look and see how our wood stork populations are doing. And then now all that information gets sent back to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We also partner up with the local universities, particularly UCF and Rollins College, for various studies and research projects. We have several active projects. One, this student, Jenna Palmisano, is working on her doctoral thesis, and she is studying pygmy rattlesnakes and looking at a invasive parasite that tends to be infecting our rattlesnakes. And so she's utilizing the wetlands for that. And so we're happy to open the property for that. Again, with all the different things going on, one of the missions that we thought was important is to educate people about the wetlands and what is the goal? How do we keep our wetlands and our water quality clean? And of course, promoting wetlands and wetland technology. And so many years ago, about 25 years ago, we held the first Orlando Wetlands Festival. And every year we held that for many years, every year. Now we've gone to every other year because it has grown to such a large event. In fact, we held it in February of 2023, and we had over 4,000 people in attendance. And we don't do a good job of counting the folks. Some people thought we had as many as 8,000. But it's a large one-day event. And again, the purpose of that is to educate people about Florida's water environment and the importance of wetlands and wildlife resources. So again, as the wetlands continues to grow, we've got all these people in the wetlands. How do we move people around? And so we, right off the bat, we had realized that there were a few linchpins within, the wetlands. There were some really long hikes where people were getting stranded, and some people get overheated in the summers. And so, what can we do to alleviate that? Well, one of the things we realized right away is we need a boardwalk over the wetlands. And so we began to put together a conceptual plan. We also laid out an equestrian trail to better move horses along the berms, keep them out of some of the areas, the highest traffic areas where we have pedestrians, things like that. And so we put together this concept plan to renovate some hiking areas, to create some new hiking trails, to build this boardwalk, to create the dedicated equestrian trail. And then we went out and started looking for funding. And that enters Florida Department of Environmental Protection and the Florida Recreational Trails Program. So we found that grant program, and it's a 50% match, which makes it very palatable, for city leaders to be able to spend that funding when it's a 50% match. And so we were awarded the grant from the FDEP and which the money comes from the Florida Highway or the Federal Highway Administration. And we were able to create this 2,200-foot elevated boardwalk, install that new trail, renovate another equestrian trail, and then also some of the hiking trails. And so in July of 2022, boardwalk construction began after we were able to complete all the necessary paperwork for the grant. And they used this very unique machine called a Marshmaster with a pile driver, and they would drive in the piles. And about 6 months later, lo and behold, we had a beautiful new boardwalk that's almost a half-mile long over the water. The total cost was $658,000, and the general contractor is a contractor out of Winter Park, Florida, Amcon Development Group. And I give them kudos because they did an outstanding job putting that together. And here's a drone footage taking a look at the boardwalk, and you can see the you know, the symmetry of the boardwalk, some beautiful flowing lines, and it goes around the cypress dome, which you can see on the left there. And that cypress dome is where we do the wood stork monitoring. We also have, there were about 130 nests of wood storks in that cypress dome. You can see there's some folks hiking along and looking into the cypress dome. You can also look down into the water and see bass and bluegill and tilapia. There's always alligators around the boardwalk as well. So it's just a great way to come out and view the property. And also, as I mentioned, it really did kind of eliminate some of those really long distance hikes. In fact, it created some shorter hiking opportunities. And, you know, with it connecting 3 different berms, it just gives folks a lot of different options to get out and enjoy the wetlands. And that's not all. We're building a new wetlands visitor center. And again, inside this visitor center will be chocked full of exhibits about what the wetlands does, you know, how we built the facility to treat and clean and purify our water, how we're protecting the St. Johns River, how we're providing a home for all this incredible wildlife, and then also going over, you know, all the different maps and things for the hikers and bird watchers to come in. We'll also give a place for our volunteers to begin launching more and more of those tours. So we're super excited of all the different things that are coming to the wetlands. And we certainly hope that you guys, as I mentioned, can come out and enjoy the Orlando wetlands. Again, the tram tours are Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays from 9 a.m. till 3 p.m. And our friends of the Orlando wetlands are the ones that lead those tours. And we don't charge anything for any of those tours. It's all free of charge. They do accept donations, and that's how they purchase those electric trams. But if you'd like any more information, certainly visit our website, orlando.gov/wetlands. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all the great information and the videos and the presentation. That was all such good information to have. I actually had the chance to tour the wetlands a couple months ago, and it's really an amazing place. The boardwalk is absolutely stunning and a great opportunity to look for wildlife. So I definitely recommend anyone who has not visited to take a trip out there and make a stop. We are now going to open the floor to questions. So if anyone has a question for Mark about the wetlands or the function of the wetlands, feel free to type that in the chat or send it directly to me. And we do already have a couple to start with. Can you explain a little more about how prescribed burning benefits the wetlands?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we use the prescribed fire mainly to slow down. One of the, I guess I didn't go into what are the, you know, kind of the threats to the water quality. And again, that's our primary goal. So water quality, well, one of the threats over time, you know, the way that wetlands are cleaning the water is they are removing those nutrients from the water. They're putting it into the biomass. So the cattails, the bulrush, all the aquatic plants are taking those nutrients and they're putting it into their biomass. Well, that biomass, you know, the leaves grow, they're nice and green. Well, then they die and they fall back into the water. And so now they're building detritus. That detritus is just the broken down plant matter at the bottom of the wetland. That detritus ultimately turns into muck. That muck, as it consolidates and compresses, turns into peat. And so many of us recognize that from our gardening. Peat is great for our gardens because it's high in nitrogen and phosphorus, the nutrients that our vegetables need in our gardens. Well, one of the things we're trying to do is slow down that sediment deposition process because the muck, as it's filling in, is essentially filling in the wetlands. And so we do prescribe burning to slow that process down. If once the muck, and even though it does slow it down a little bit, it also encourages new growth. And so the new growth of cattails will then take up even more nutrients than before the fire. Other benefits that we've found is that the fires, the prescribed fires, tend to discourage and eliminate certain invasive species like primrose willow, which is an invasive from Argentina. And then also we notice that there's higher utilization of burned areas by wildlife. And so we just think the prescribed burning has multiple benefits.
Great, thank you so much. Another question here, is the same concept being used today in Everglades restoration?
In fact, I didn't talk about it much, but, since this is, a water quality treatment wetlands, we monitor the water quality every single day. In fact, about every 30 minutes of every day, we take a sample, put it into a jug, and then every day, even on Christmas and New Year's, we have a staff member out here pulling those samples, taking it to a laboratory for analysis. That's been going on since 1987, every single day. So we have an incredible data set of how wetlands remove nutrients. And in fact, that data set was used in the early days by the South Florida Water Management District to help model some of the Everglades restoration projects that are going on. So certainly, the Everglades has benefited from the Orlando wetlands. And then another question I get asked a lot is, are there any more of these wetlands? There's actually about 3,000 of these wastewater treatment wetlands throughout the world today. There's probably about 40, 45 of them in the state of Florida. I think there's about 800 to 1,000 across the United States. So yes, the technology is being used, and there's more and more being proposed that I'm aware of. So certainly, the Orlando Wetlands continues to provide valuable information. Every year we do numerous tours for international guests, dignitaries, engineers, political leaders that are coming to see the wetlands, to see how this thing was built, how does it run, and a lot of those folks are taking that technology back and implementing it, in their own spaces.
Amazing. Yeah, that's very cool to see it having such a ripple effect throughout other projects in the state and even across the country. Can you go back to mentioning active versus passive recreation and what you mean by active recreation not being allowed at the wetlands?
Yeah, so we do allow, obviously kind of that quiet, peaceful enjoyment of wildlife. So hiking, bicycling, jogging. In the early days, we allowed some of the larger recreational events, things like large races and things like that, where it's bringing in hundreds of people and they're racing. And we just kind of determined that that wasn't in the best interest of the wetlands. It wasn't in the best interest for the wildlife. And so we discourage those larger kind of active recreational events. There's no, group sports activities like baseball or softball. We don't have softball fields. We don't have a playground for kids to come and play. Again, it really is just kind of a place for peaceful enjoyment of nature.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very important to make sure that, the main mission and goals are being met and then supported by how it's used as a recreation space, and they're not overtaking the main goal of the water treatment. The next question here, what advice would you have for someone applying for an RTP grant?
Develop a great project. Now, I would say, for us, it was, I think you're looking for something that doesn't just cater to one group. If you can develop a project that's helping out multiple groups, and also, a project that really does provide some inspiration to folks. I think that the boardwalk, time and time again, we've just heard nothing but praise for that, because folks are going out and they're inspired. And I think that's a great thing. So if you can come up with a project that, is inspirational and meets various goals and objectives for various user groups, then I think you'll probably have an award-winning project.
Awesome. Great advice. Definitely, it's an otherworldly experience to be out there on the boardwalk, and especially in the evening when you can see kind of the sunset and the birds. It definitely is inspirational. And the last question here, what is your favorite place at the wetlands, or where should someone visit if it's their first time?
Oh boy. That's a great question. There's so many. I really like the Outfall Canal, and a lot of people don't make it, all the way to the back, because that's probably about 1.5 miles from the parking area. But if you can get all the way to the outfall where the water leaves the wetlands, it takes a stream course about a half mile through the property, and that stream is just beautiful. You'll see all kinds of fish, routinely see otters and alligators in that stream as well. So that's certainly a hidden gem. Then we also have an area called the Northwoods Branch Trail. And so that's a hiking trail that goes back through the woods. And again, I don't think a lot of people actually get back to that trail. Most people are staying on top of the berm roads, walking around the wetlands. But that's a shaded trail, and it's absolutely beautiful in portions of that. So.
Awesome, great recommendations. And again, I just want to reiterate, if you have the chance, definitely go visit the amazing property that Mark manages out there with his team. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up for today. So thank you again, Mark, for joining us and speaking on our series today. If anyone here is not subscribed to our webinar series and you would like to do so, you can visit our website, floridadep.gov/OGT. And next month, we will be airing on the second Wednesday, featuring Bike Florida as our guest presenter. And we hope to see you there. If you have any questions or feedback about today's presentation or the webinar series, feel free to reach out to the Office of Greenways and Trails at floridadep.gov. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Thank you, Mark, for speaking, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.